Welcome to Free Thinking Through the Fourth Turning. My name is Sasha Stone. Oh, that sweet, sweet Schadenfreude. The Democrats are finally getting what they deserve. Enjoy it while it lasts. Quote, Schadenfreude can't get much better than watching the Republican Party self-humiliate with an abject inability to win while holding control of the House, Senate, and White House. Daniel Henninger, Wall Street Journal. Oh, I beg to differ, Mr. Henninger. It most certainly can get better. How about a political party that rigged the game in its favor, had nearly all of the legacy press in its pocket, suddenly in the spotlight for the biggest political cover-up in modern American history? The puppet masters are mad that the puppet has gone rogue. If that isn't sweet, sweet Schadenfreude, I don't know what is. Democracy keeps getting in the way of saving democracy. The New York Times has now published not one but two op-eds to force old Joe out of power. According to the Times, quote, Donald Trump's candidacy for a second term poses a grave threat to American democracy, end quote. What exactly is Trump's threat to democracy? They never really say. Maybe it's something different for everyone. For black voters, the mean old Republicans want to strip away their voting rights. For women, it's abortion. For people like Molly Jong-Fast, it's ideological. They can't get Trump to accept the rigged election of 2020. Say it, confess, witch. And for those who don't know anything, it's Project 2025, the biggest threat to democracy, even though they have no idea what's in it. It's not really democracy the Democrats want, it's fascism. They want absolute power to decide who should and who should not be elected. If voters pick the wrong one, they mobilize their army to take that person out of power. What they did to Trump, they're now trying to do to Biden. If Biden was dominating in the polls, the media would still be covering for him, calling Republicans extremists and conspiracy theorists, and they would be full steam ahead with Operation Get Trump. Here is Elise Stefanik.
Good morning. There is no longer any doubt that Joe Biden is unfit to be our commander-in-chief. The Biden White House, far-left House Democrats, and the mainstream media are in complete disarray because they know this to be true and have been caught participating in one of the greatest media cover-ups in American history. For the last 3.5 years, House Republicans and the American people have been demanding details about Joe Biden's mental and physical decline. But every time we raise these legitimate concerns, far-left Democrats and their loyal stenographers in the mainstream media rushed to Biden's defense, claiming that the clearly diminished Joe Biden was as sharp as ever and accusing us of peddling conspiracy theories. The cover-up is over and accountability is here. For years, House Republicans have known that Joe Biden is unfit for office. We also know that he will go to any lengths to maintain his grip on power. This is why it is so crucial that we take every possible measure to ensure that the 2024 presidential election is free from election interference and is constitutional. As part of that ongoing effort, House Republicans are bringing to the floor this week Congressman Chip Roy's Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, which requires individuals to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote in federal elections. Not surprisingly, the Biden White House, whose far-left open border agenda has let in millions, over 10 million illegal immigrants, is against our bill. This is a very simple...
Democracy is the biggest problem for the Democrats right now because democracy has them getting their asses kicked by Donald Trump. The latest poll by Emerson is a blowout, no matter which candidate runs. A poll by Emerson showing Trump up by 3 against Biden, up by 6 against Kamala Harris, 6 against Bernie Sanders, 8 against Gavin Newsom, 5 against Al Gore, 7 against Hillary Clinton, 10 against Elizabeth Warren, 10 against Pete Buttigieg, 8 against Josh Shapiro, and 10 against Gretchen Whitmer. They're trying to preserve democracy while at the same time telling Americans that they don't know their own minds, and that the very democracy they're participating in is leading them astray because they prefer Trump. Their excuse is Weimar Germany. They believe Trump is Hitler, and the American public is like the Germans in the 1930s, ready to vote for a fascist. It's just more gaslighting by them. We already had Trump in office for 4 years. Nothing he did was as bad as what they've been doing in the 4 years Biden has been in power, and the public knows it. Things are going so badly for the Democrats that the conservatives are throwing a party. For once, the news cycle isn't trained on them as the snake eats its own tail. We haven't seen anything like this in American politics since Watergate. For years, the press tried to turn Trump into the biggest American scandal in our history, but it was never true. It was always rooted in their imaginary version of Trump. They'd cherry-pick things he said and blow them up into one lie after another. Even now, both Biden and Kamala Harris have to lie about Trump just to keep fuel in the tank. Watching them all squirm and struggle under the glaring eye of the press is a wonder to behold. Here's Speaker Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Thank you all for being here on what is, I believe, the smallest crowd ever assembled for a Republican press conference. I don't know where everybody is this morning. Oh, they're chasing down the Democrats for a change. This is a really interesting phenomenon. And the reason it's so noteworthy and the reason that most of the Hill press are following the Democrats around now, we had almost no one outside our conference meeting this morning. Normally, you're all there gathered in the hallways. They're busy because they're chasing down our Democrat colleagues and asking them about Joe Biden's mental acuity and their efforts to cover it up. And that's what it's been. I mean, we could give you example after example after example. It's all on tape. It's all on record. Everybody knows it. Democrats, our colleagues, for 3.5 years have been covering up this glaring problem. The staff in the White House have been covering it up, and so have the Democrats in Congress. Just last month, I brought a couple of examples. Representative Dan Goldman said Biden was sharper than anyone he'd spoken to and that he has, quote, a photographic memory, unquote. Representative Eric Swalwell said that Biden put many of us to shame with his energy. I mean, there are example after example after example, leading Democrats and noteworthy Democrats on the Hill who have not been in the dark about this. They've been saying things I think most of them understand is simply not true, and they've misled the American people. And this is dangerous. We have the NATO summit going on, the 75th anniversary of NATO here, all of our guests from around the world. What we're projecting from the White House is not strength right now, at a very dangerous time around the world. And that's why the American people are so alarmed by this. That's why the polls say that most of the Americans, people understand that Joe Biden is not fit for that office. And it's a terrible thing. The Democrats have misled us, and they need to be held accountable for that.
The Schadenfreude will be short-lived, however. We must enjoy it while it lasts, because not too long from now, the puppet masters will order everyone to fall back in line, and this debacle will go down the memory hole. It's already starting, as predicted by Walter Kern. Podcast listeners, a tweet by Walter Kern, quote, "We are being subtly introduced to the idea that the presidency is a diffuse impersonal office, and that the buck stops nowhere that is immediately conventionally identifiable, and to that notion that this has been the case for some time now, so just get used to it." And a tweet by Maria Shriver that says, "You are electing a team, you are voting for a vision. You are voting for decency, dignity, and democracy. Pass it on." And a picture of all the Democrats with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris out front. They can finally see the baseball players. Why is this so delicious, this Schadenfreude, considering that a compromised weak leader isn't great for America? Because it feels good to finally be vindicated, to have other people see what we've been screaming about for years. As the Biden scandal took off like a rocket, the endless hysteria about Trump was punctured, at long last. Now everyone could see the baseball players, like in this scene from Field of Dreams.
What do we got here?
She fell.
This child's choking to death.
Get her up.
Hold it steady now. Hot dog, stuck in her throat.
Oh, she'll be all right. She'll be turning handsprings before you know it.
Thank you, Doc.
No, son. Thank you.
Oh, my God, you can't go back. You can't go back, can you?
It's all right.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. I best be getting on home before Alicia begins to think I got a girlfriend.
Hey, Doc.
Good work, Doc.
How's it going, Doc? Don't miss you, Doc.
Wouldn't went for me one day, will you, boys?
Okay, Doc. Yeah, Doc.
When did these ball players get here?
It isn't just that the Democrats and their propaganda press have been exposed for hiding Joe Biden. It's also that even before this happened, voters were already done with the Democrats. Their lies and gaslighting finally caught up with them, and now the whole thing has collapsed like a house of cards. Field of Dreams would never get made today, yet another thing the left destroyed. No one should blame Americans for wanting to turn the page, to get back to some kind of normal way of life, free from hysteria and fanaticism. The only way out for them is, ironically, democracy. Puppet went rogue. How desperate are the puppet masters at the New York Times? Desperate enough to trot out James Carville, who just 2 seconds ago was written off as an out-of-touch, anti-woke, misogynist white guy. Now Carville has a front row seat and is even given a page one spot at the Times. He writes, quote, "And our opponent, the one born with a platinum spoon but no moral compass, the pathological liar, the felon, the predator found liable for sexual abuse, the wannabe dictator, the Putin lickspittle. I'm not worried about him either. It's been an agonizing time for those of us who think President Biden more than earned a second term, but isn't going to win one. But now we've got to move on." End quote. Ah, so that's democracy. James Carville finally explained it. Democracy isn't the will of the people. It isn't about elections or candidates or anything like that. It's only about winning. If your candidate crashes and burns a few months away from the election, you simply swap him out like you're moving pieces on the chessboard. That explains why they all felt it was their right to remove Trump from power after one term, and why they've moved mountains to try to bankrupt him and prevent him from even running again. He's a threat to democracy because voters actually want to vote for him. Carville sees a potential future for the Democrats, one that is driven by what the people want rather than the dictates of the puppet masters. But that's a long way off, and Joe Biden, bless his heart, is not leaving. Like this scene from Wolf of Wall Street.
For years, I've been telling you guys never to take no for an answer, right? You know, to keep pushing, to never hang up the phone until you get what you want. Because you all deserve it. You know this fucking deal that I'm about to sign? Barring me from the securities industry, barring me from Stratton, my home. The fuck is that, you know? I'll tell you what it is. It's me taking no for an answer, you know? It's them selling me, not the other way around. It's me being a hypocrite is what it is. So, you know what? I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm not fucking leaving! The show goes on! This is my home! They're gonna need a fucking wrecking ball to take me out of here!
They're gonna need to send in the National Guard or fucking SWAT team, because I ain't going nowhere!
Poor Joe. He made the tragic mistake of believing his own publicity. He didn't get the memo in 2020 that he was just a stopgap measure to take down Trump, a temporary solution to the problem of democracy. People are voting for the wrong candidates and something has to be done about it. Let's put the bland guy who stood behind Barack Obama for 8 years in power. The public already trusts him. He won't even have to campaign. He can sit in the basement. The less he says, the better. We don't even know what his plans are for America. He'll only be there for one term anyway, and he won't even be running things. Well, Joe never got that message. He basked in his newfound hero status. He wanted to be FDR or JFK. He wanted to be great because for his whole life, that had been the promise. Turn up, Joe. Do the people's work, Joe. Bide your time. Get the hair plugs. Get the eyes done to stay young enough for a chance at the presidency. But it was always, not this year, Joe. In 2016, he had been the Veep to a president young enough to be his son. When it was finally his turn to ride those coattails, he was passed over, like Fredo in Godfather 2.
He said that you were being tough on the negotiations, but if they could get a little help and close the deal fast, it'd be good for the family.
You believe that story? You believe that?
He said there was something in it for me, on my own.
I've always taken care of you, Fredo.
Taking care of me? You're my kid brother, and you take care of me? Did you ever think about that? Huh? Did you ever once think about that? Send Fredo off to do this, send Fredo off to do that. Let Fredo take care of some Mickey Mouse nightclub somewhere. Send Fredo to pick somebody up at the airport. I'm your older brother, Mike, and I was stepped over.
That's the way Pop wanted it.
It ain't the way I wanted it. I can handle things. I'm smart. Not like everybody says. Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect.
Is there anything you can tell me about this investigation? Anything more?
The Senate lawyer, Questad. He belongs to Roth.
Fredo, you're nothing to me now. You're not a brother. You're not a friend. I don't want to know you or what you do. I don't want to see you at the hotels. I don't want you near my house. When you see our mother, I want to know a day in advance so I won't be there.
So when he was finally called back from retirement in 2020 to save America from Trump, it was his turn. Now he had the Iron Throne. There was no chance he would walk away. He wanted this his whole life. He won the nomination. Voters chose him. And now they want him to give up after his entire life has been about serving the country? Oh, right, democracy. Oh, that darn democracy. It keeps getting in the way of saving democracy. It was telling at the last fundraiser when Obama took Joe by the hand and led him off stage, like Michael Corleone kissing Fredo, just before the puppet masters were about to give old Joe the heave-ho.
There's a plane waiting for us to take us to Miami in an hour. All right. Don't make a big thing about it. I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. You broke my heart.
In a million years, no one would have predicted mutiny in the Democratic Party. They've been so united for so long, like obedient robots. But now, it's an unmitigated disaster. Imagine, after all that, Trump back in power. And it's all democracy's fault. And that, my friends, is what you call sweet, sweet Schadenfreude. A constitutional republic, if you can keep it. For all of this talk about how Trump is a threat to democracy, the Democrats prove every day why the founders wanted a constitutional republic and not a democracy.
Democracy is a form of government based upon the principle of majority rule, period. End of discussion. Now, that's not very complicated. Majority rule. It's easy to understand, easy to sell to the masses, and, I might add, deadly. For example, what would you call a lynch mob? That's majority rule. There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope. Now, that's pure democracy in action. But wait a minute, you say. The majority should rule, yes, but not to the extent of destroying the rights of the minority. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer describing a democracy. We are speaking of a republic. A republic is a limited democracy. It's a form of government based upon the principle of limited majority rule. Limited so that the minority, even a minority of one, can be protected against the whims and passions of the majority. And how do you protect the minority from the majority? You write down a set of rules on a piece of paper. You say, this we can do, that we cannot. At the top of the paper, you write the word Constitution. And then everyone agrees to follow the rules no matter what the temptation. And when you're finished, you've created a constitutional republic.
In 2015, a violent mob attacked Trump supporters. It was barely a story. Has there ever been a time in history since the civil rights movement that violent mobs took to the streets to scare off voters of the opposition?
Overnight, all-out brawls outside the Trump rally in San Jose, California. Trump supporters harassed, beaten, and bloodied by mobs of protesters.
They were like spitting on me and stuff.
This man says he was sucker punched, his clothes torn off his back.
7 more people just come in, start punching me. I look pretty bad.
This lone female Trump supporter tried to stand her ground. Her sign torn from her hands, her glasses ripped off, then shoved in her face. A woman wearing a Trump jersey cornered and then egged in the face.
Nazis go home!
Fights breaking out in the streets all over the convention. Inside, Trump spoke to a large and welcoming crowd.
In 2016, thousands of freaked-out Democrats took to the streets to howl and wail about Trump's win.
Burning cars and smashed windows. A small group of protesters dressed in black, their faces covered, armed with hammers and bricks. Facing off with thousands of officers on site, many in riot gear, confronting them with flashbang grenades and pepper spray.
All of a sudden, the police officers started to spray pepper spray, and they got our audio technician. They're going to see us running because they're going to throw more flashbangs.
The chaotic scene just blocks outside the secure area of the inauguration and parade route.
I personally have anti-establishment slants, but I don't think that this is anything that I want to be a...
This checkpoint is closed!
Before the swearing-in ceremony even began, protesters tried to block checkpoint entrances.
It's closed!
During President Trump's speech, several demonstrators were escorted out of the area. Several officers injured during the protest today, and more than 100 people arrested. Once the inaugural parade began, the newly sworn-in president facing thousands of peaceful protesters amongst his supporters. NBC's Stephanie Gosk was with him all day.
When Donald Trump took the oath of office, the people here sang, "We shall overcome."
Resist from day one!
Similar demonstrations across the country. Arrest outside Trump Tower, New York City. A human chain across San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge. From Phoenix to Houston to Chicago, people protesting the country's new president on his first day in office.
Tonight, thousands of protesters remain in downtown D.C., occasionally facing off with police. We have seen many people injured, both protesters
and police officers. And tomorrow, D.C. police are preparing for a women's march on Washington. Organizers of that march say they expect a couple 100,000 people.
Did they ever accept him as the duly elected president? Not for 1 minute, not for 4 years. The mob showed up in the summer of 2020 and threatened to bust through the gates at the White House.
They lit the guardhouse on fire at the White House, and now the police are deploying tear gas.
Mobs gathered anywhere they could put pressure on juries, like the Derek Chauvin or Kyle Rittenhouse trials. Cancel culture became the status quo on the left, with very few people in power willing to take a stand against it. Even now, their mob stands at the ready anytime something doesn't go their way. They're fixated on January 6th as the worst thing to happen to America since 9/11, but those with common sense knew our government did not treat these mobs the same way. Sooner or later, that double standard would come back to haunt them. And so it has. But don't get too comfortable. If Biden stays, all of them will repeat their mandated mantra, Joe Biden is better than Trump, Joe Biden is better than Trump, democracy is on the ballot. But if the polls are bad enough, Biden's days in the White House will be numbered. Don't forget how The Godfather 2 ends. Poor Fredo. He's done for. And Michael, he embraces the corrupt mob boss he's become. Don't ever take sides against the family again.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women. Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners.
Thank you for listening to my podcast, sashastone.substack.com. And remember, to thine own self be true.
All them long and lonely nights I put you through. Somewhere in there, I'm sure I made you cry. But I can't remember if we said goodbye. But I recall all of them nights down in Mexico. One place I may never go in my life again. Was I just off somewhere, just too high? But I can't remember if we said goodbye.
I break down and cry, 'cause I can't remember if we said goodbye. But I recall all of them nights down in Mexico. That's one place I'll never go in my life again. Was I off somewhere, maybe just too high? But I can't remember if we said